25 black musicians you didn't know were gay. Think you know the icons who shaped your favorite playlists? Think again. Behind the shimmering gowns of the blues and the defiant bars of modern hip-hop lies a truth buried for decades. What if I told you the legendary hits you've hummed since childhood were fueled by a love the world forced them to hide? From the architect of rock to R&B's silkiest voices, we're stripping away the industry's mask to reveal 25 legends who lived a double life. This isn't just music history, it's a revolution of the heart. Are you ready to see your idols in a completely new light? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to Black Celebrity Secrets. Let's uncover the untold truths that changed the world forever. Little Richard. Before there were stadiums, there was a voice that shattered every silence. Born Richard Wayne Penniman on December 5, 1932, in the deeply segregated heart of Macon, Georgia, Little Richard was the third of 12 children. He grew up in a family of devout Seventh-day Adventists, an environment where his natural exuberance and gender-fluid mannerisms were often met with harsh rejection. At just 15, his father kicked him out for his perceived effeminacy, forcing the young man to find sanctuary in the vibrant underground world of traveling medicine shows and drag performances. In 1955, everything changed. With the release of Tutti Frutti, Richard didn't just top the R&B charts, he ignited a cultural explosion. The track sold over 1 million copies within a year, an astronomical feat for a black artist in the 1950s. On stage, he was a force of nature. Pompadoured hair, shimmering mascara, and a vocal range that jumped from a gravelly growl to a piercing falsetto scream. He was the first to realize that spectacle was a weapon of liberation. Behind the scenes, however, Richard's life was a tempest of contradictions. He lived through a cycle of renouncing his homosexuality to become a preacher, only to be drawn back to the stage's magnetic pull. He once described himself as omnisexual, a term far ahead of its time. Despite his massive influence, mentoring a young Jimi Hendrix and inspiring the Beatles, who opened for him in 1962, the industry frequently robbed him of his financial dues. Yet his historical weight is undeniable. Induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's inaugural class of 1986 and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 1993 solidified his status. When he passed away at 87 in 2020 due to bone cancer, he left behind a world that he had personally liberated. Little Richard didn't just invent the sound of the 20th century, he fought the internal war of being black and queer when the world wasn't even ready to say those words aloud. Janelle Monáe. If Little Richard was the architect of the spark, Janelle Monáe is the engineer of the galaxy. Born in Kansas City on December 1, 1985, Monáe Robinson arrived in the music scene not as a star, but as a myth. Early in her career, she adopted a strict uniform of black and white tuxedos, a sartorial tribute to her working-class parents, and a shield against the industry's demand for female hypersexualization. Through her alter ego, the android Cindy Mayweather, Monáe used science fiction to explore the otherness of being black and LGBTQ+ in America, creating a sanctuary for those who felt like outsiders. The turning point came in 2018 with the release of the emotion picture album, Dirty Computer. Moving away from the metaphors of robots, Monáe stood in the sun. In a landmark Rolling Stone interview that year, she identified as pansexual, stating she had been in relationships with both men and women. This vulnerability transformed her art from high-concept fiction into a radical anthem for the marginalized. The album earned a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year and peaked at number 6 on the Billboard 200, proving that the world was ready for a black woman who refused to be categorized. Her evolution continued into the 2020s. In 2022, Monáe publicly announced her non-binary identity, embracing they/them alongside she/her pronouns, highlighting that her spirit is not bound by traditional binaries. Beyond the studio, she is a titan of advocacy, leading the Wonderland Arts Society and utilizing her platform to fight for voting rights and racial equity. With 10 Grammy nominations and a burgeoning film career, starring in the Oscar-winning Moonlight and Hidden Figures, Janelle Monáe has proven that authenticity is the ultimate superpower. She isn't just following a trend, she is the blueprint for a future where identity is as limitless as the music she composes. Her journey reminds us that the untold secrets of the past are now the proud manifestos of the present. Frank Ocean. In the hyper-masculine corridors of hip-hop and R&B, silence is often a survival tactic. But on July 4, 2012, Frank Ocean, born Christopher Edwin Breaux, chose a different path. Just days before the release of his major label debut, Channel Orange, Ocean published a heartfelt letter on his Tumblr blog. He detailed his first love, a man he met when he was 19. It wasn't just a coming-out moment, it was a seismic shift in urban music culture. Never before had a black male artist at the precipice of superstardom in these genres dared to be so transparent about queer desire. The impact was immediate and profound. Channel Orange debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and went on to win the Grammy for Best Urban Contemporary Album. Songs like Bad Religion and Forrest Gump were suddenly viewed through a lens of radical honesty, challenging the listener to find the universal in a specific, queer experience. Ocean's genius lies in his ability to capture the vibe of longing, that atmospheric, hazy feeling of unrequited love that transcends labels. He didn't just break a glass ceiling, he dismantled the entire roof, allowing a new generation of artists to breathe. By the time he released his sophomore masterpiece, Blonde, in 2016, Ocean had become a symbol of artistic independence. The album, released independently after a clever departure from his record label, debuted at number 1 in the US and the UK, selling 276,000 equivalent album units in its first week alone. He remains a reclusive figure, rarely giving interviews and avoiding the traditional celebrity machinery. This mystique only strengthens his bond with his audience. Frank Ocean doesn't ask for permission to exist, he simply creates space, a sprawling sonic landscape where vulnerability is the greatest form of strength, and where being different is the primary source of his undeniable power. Tracy Chapman. While many artists shout to be heard, Tracy Chapman's power has always resided in her stillness. Born on March 30, 1964, in Cleveland, Ohio, Chapman was raised in a working-class neighborhood where she learned that music was not just entertainment, but a vehicle for social change. In 1988, a 24-year-old Chapman walked onto the stage at the Nelson Mandela 75th birthday tribute at Wembley Stadium. Armed only with an acoustic guitar and a voice that felt like weathered velvet, she performed Fast Car. By the next morning, she was a global phenomenon. Her self-titled debut album became a cultural juggernaut, selling over 20 million copies worldwide and earning her 3 Grammy Awards, including Best New Artist. In an era dominated by the glitz of synth pop and hair metal, Tracy Chapman was an anomaly. A black woman with a short afro, wearing a simple turtleneck, singing about systemic poverty, domestic violence, and the yearning for a better life. While she has remained intensely private about her personal life, never utilizing her sexuality as a marketing tool, her identity as a queer woman has been an open secret and a source of quiet inspiration for decades. Her long-term relationship with writer Alice Walker in the 1990s was a testament to a life lived authentically, but on her own terms. Chapman's legacy saw a historic resurgence in 2023 and 2024. When country singer Luke Combs covered Fast Car, Chapman became the first black songwriter to win Song of the Year at the Country Music Association, CMA Awards, 35 years after the song's original release. Her surprise performance at the 2024 Grammys sent the track back to #1 on the iTunes charts, proving that her message of hope and struggle is timeless. Tracy Chapman represents the untold truth that you don't have to be loud to be revolutionary. She has navigated a challenging industry with her dignity intact, proving that a black queer woman's perspective is not a niche story, but the very heartbeat of the American folk tradition. Lil Nas X. Montero Lamar Hill, known globally as Lil Nas X, didn't just enter the music industry, he hacked it. Born on April 9, 1999 in Lithia Springs, Georgia, he spent his adolescence mastering the language of the internet, a skill that would later allow him to weaponize memes into multi-platinum records. In 2019, his genre-blurring hit, Old Town Road, achieved what was previously thought impossible. It spent a record-breaking 19 consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming the longest-running chart topper in history. Yet it was at the absolute zenith of this viral fame, on the final day of Pride Month in 2019, that he made the most daring move of his career. By tweeting a rainbow emoji and pointing fans toward the lyrics of his song C7 Au Jour, Lil Nas X came out as gay. In doing so, he became the first artist to come out while holding a #1 record. While critics wondered if this would alienate his country fan base, Nas X doubled down on his authenticity. With his 2021 debut album, Montero, he moved past subtle hints into a full-scale celebration of queer black identity. The title track, Montero, Call Me By Your Name, debuted at #1 and featured a visual narrative that confronted religious trauma and queer shame with defiant, surrealist imagery. His impact is quantifiable not just in his 2 Grammy Awards or his 5 billion-plus streams, but in his refusal to be a palatable minority. He uses humor to deflect homophobia and high fashion to dismantle gender norms, effectively forcing a dialogue within hip-hop that had been avoided for decades. Lil Nas X represents a new era where a black queer man can be a dominant pop star without compromising his flamboyant, vulnerable, or provocative self. He isn't just a musician. He is a strategist who proved that the most radical thing you can do in the spotlight is to refuse to hide. Ma Rainey. Long before the modern movement for equality, there was Gertrude Ma Rainey, a woman whose life was as raw and unfiltered as the music she pioneered. Born in 1886 in Columbus, Georgia, Rainey was the mother of the blues, a title she earned by bridging the gap between rural Southern folk traditions and the burgeoning recording industry. By the time she signed with Paramount Records in 1923, she was already a seasoned veteran of the minstrel and vaudeville circuits, commanding a presence that was both regal and intimidating with her gold-teeth grin and necklaces made of coins. Ma Rainey was a radical figure because she was a black woman who owned her own tour bus, managed her own career, and, most shockingly for the 1920s, lived an openly bisexual life. Her 1928 track, Prove It On Me Blues, stands as perhaps the earliest coming-out anthem in recorded history. After being arrested during a police raid on an all-female party, Rainey recorded the lyrics. Went out last night with a crowd of my friends. They must have been women, 'cause I don't like no men. She didn't sing about queer desire with a sense of tragedy or shame. She sang with the confidence of a woman who answered to no one. Between 1923 and 1928, she recorded more than 92 songs, creating a blueprint for legendary artists like Bessie Smith and Louis Armstrong. Her influence was so profound that she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1990, more than half a century after her death in 1939. Ma Rainey's story is the foundation of this entire list. She proved that black queer excellence has always been at the heart of American music, hidden in plain sight within the grooves of the blues. She wasn't just a singer, She was a boss in an era that tried to deny her both her race and her womanhood, leaving a legacy of defiance that still echoes through the halls of music history. Billy Porter. Billy Porter is more than an entertainer. He is a living testament to the power of resilience. Born on September 21, 1969 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Porter's journey began in the church, where his soaring tenor voice was discovered. However, the same pews that fostered his talent often harbored the trauma of rejection due to his sexuality. For decades, Porter navigated a Hollywood and Broadway industry that told him he was too flamboyant or too much, forcing him into a period of near obscurity and financial ruin during the early 2000s. But the untold truth of Billy Porter is that his greatest success came only when he decided to stop hiding. His career was revitalized in 2013 when he originated the role of Lola in the Broadway musical Kinky Boots. His performance was a masterclass in vulnerability and strength, earning him the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical and a Grammy Award. He didn't just play a character, he brought the complexities of Black queer life to the forefront of American theater. This momentum culminated in his role as Pray Tell in the landmark series Pose, for which he became the first openly gay Black man to win the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series in 2019. In 2021, Porter made a courageous public announcement, revealing that he had been living with HIV for 14 years. By breaking his silence, he aimed to dismantle the stigma that has disproportionately affected Black gay men for generations. Beyond his acting and music, which includes high-energy dance tracks like Children, Porter has become a global fashion icon. Whether wearing a tuxedo gown at the Oscars or a motorized fringe hat at the Grammys, he uses the red carpet as a political stage to challenge gender binaries. With a net worth estimated in the millions and an influence that spans from the Tony stage to the halls of the White House, Billy Porter proves that when you speak your truth, the world has no choice but to listen. Sylvester. If the 1970s had a guardian angel of the dance floor, it was Sylvester James Jr. Born in Los Angeles on September 6, 1947, Sylvester was a child prodigy in the Pentecostal church, but his flamboyant spirit eventually led him to San Francisco's radical Coquettes drag troupe. He was a man who refused the limitations of gender long before the term non-binary entered the mainstream lexicon. While the music industry tried to market him as a traditional R&B act, Sylvester insisted on being exactly who he was, a shimmering, falsetto-voiced diva in sequins and fans. His 1978 masterpiece, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, was a cultural earthquake. It wasn't just a disco hit, it was a spiritual experience. The song reached #1 on the Billboard Dance Chart and surged into the top 40 of the Hot 100, selling over 1 million copies worldwide. Sylvester's voice, a crystalline falsetto that rivaled the greats like Aretha Franklin, turned the disco into a sanctuary of liberation for the LGBTQ+ community. He was one of the first Black gay artists to appear on national television, such as American Bandstand, without toning down his makeup or his femininity, boldly declaring in interviews, "I'm not a drag queen, I'm Sylvester." Tragically, the height of his fame collided with the onset of the AIDS crisis. Even as he grew weak, Sylvester remained a revolutionary. In 1988, he led the People with AIDS March in San Francisco from a wheelchair. Before his death on December 16, 1988, at the age of 41, he made a historic gesture. He bequeathed all future royalties from his music to AIDS-related charities in San Francisco, ensuring that his voice would continue to save lives long after he was gone. Today, his music remains an anthem of defiance and joy. Sylvester didn't just sing for the charts. He sang for the freedom of every mighty, real soul who ever felt they didn't belong, leaving a legacy that is as glittering and eternal as the disco balls he performed under. Tyler, the Creator. Tyler Okonma, known to the world as Tyler, the Creator, is perhaps the most complex figure in modern music. Born on March 6, 1991, in Hawthorne, California, he emerged as the leader of the Odd Future Collective, a group that thrived on chaos and provocation. In his early years, Tyler was often criticized for using homophobic slurs, leading to a 2015 ban from entering the United Kingdom. However, the untold story of Tyler is one of profound growth, a journey from a defensive teenager to an artist who uses his platform to explore the fluid nature of his own desire. The seismic shift occurred in 2017 with the release of Flower Boy. Moving away from the horrorcore aesthetics of his youth, Tyler offered lyrics like, "I've been kissing white boys since 2004, signaling a vulnerable departure from his previous persona. This wasn't a PR stunt, it was an artistic confession. His 2019 masterpiece, Igor, took this even further, presenting a conceptual narrative about a love triangle involving another man. The album was a commercial and critical juggernaut, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 and winning the Grammy for Best Rap Album. By winning this award, Tyler proved that a black artist could be weird, queer, and experimental while still dominating the charts. Today, Tyler is a mogul, with his fashion brand Golf Wang generating millions and his Camp Flog Gnaw Festival attracting tens of thousands of fans annually. He has successfully redefined masculinity in hip-hop, moving from combat boots to loafers and cardigans, and from aggression to introspection. Tyler doesn't provide easy answers about his sexuality, often using irony to protect his privacy, but his music speaks volumes. He has sold over 10 million albums globally, not by fitting in, but by evolving so radically that the world had no choice but to catch up. He represents the freedom to change one's mind and one's heart in the public eye. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. To understand the history of music, one must recognize that before Elvis Presley or Chuck Berry, there was Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Born on March 20, 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, Tharpe was a child prodigy who mastered the guitar in a way that defied the gender norms of the 1930s. She was a gospel superstar who possessed a sacred voice and a profane technique on the electric guitar, distorting notes and utilizing a heavy beat that would eventually be called rock and roll. Her 1944 hit, Strange Things Happening Every Day, is widely considered the first true rock record to reach the Billboard Race Records chart. Behind the gospel robes and the church-sanctioned fame, Rosetta lived a life of quiet but determined queer independence. While she was married to men for appearances, her most enduring partnership was with fellow singer Marie Knight. For years, the two women toured together as a duo, sharing a life and a bed in an era when such a thing was legally and socially perilous. They were partners, in every sense of the word, navigating the Jim Crow South and the rigid expectations of the Pentecostal church with grace and secret defiance. Rosetta was a woman who lived between two worlds, the spiritual and the secular, the straight and the queer. Her influence is staggering. Little Richard, Johnny Cash, and Eric Clapton all cited her as their primary inspiration. Despite this, she was largely erased from the mainstream narrative of rock for decades. It wasn't until 2018 that she was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an early influence. When she died in 1973 at the age of 58, she was buried in an unmarked grave, a tragic end for a woman who gave the world its most powerful sound. Today, we recognize the truth. The foundation of rock and roll was built by a black queer woman with a Gibson guitar and a spirit that refused to be silenced. Bessie Smith. Bessie Smith did not just sing the blues, she commanded them. Born on April 15, 1894 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, she rose from busking on street corners to becoming the highest-paid black entertainer of her era. By the mid-1920s, Smith was a titan of the recording industry. Her debut 1923 release, Downhearted Blues, was a cultural phenomenon, selling an unprecedented 780,000 copies in less than 6 months. For the black working class, Bessie was a voice of dignity, singing about poverty, struggle, and the complexities of love with a raw, unvarnished power that earned her the title the Empress of the Blues. However, the untold secret of Bessie Smith was her unapologetic embrace of her bisexuality. In the high-octane world of the vaudeville circuit, Bessie was known for her fierce independence and her romantic liaisons with both men and women. Her granddaughter-in-law, Ruby Walker, later confirmed that Bessie frequently sought the company of women while on tour, living a life of sexual fluidity that was an open secret among her peers. At a time when being a black woman was a double burden, Bessie refused to be small. She traveled in her own custom railroad car, outdrank her male contemporaries, and protected her community with a legendary ferocity. Tragically, Bessie's life was cut short by a car accident in 1937 at the age of 43. While myths once suggested she died because she was refused entry to a whites-only hospital, the truth is that she was a victim of a systemic lack of resources in the segregated South. Her influence, however, remained immortal. She was a primary inspiration for Billie Holiday, Janis Joplin, and Nina Simone. In 1989, she was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Bessie Smith remains the definitive blueprint for the strong black woman, a queer pioneer who used her massive commercial success to live life entirely on her own terms. Kaytranada. If Bessie Smith provided the soul, Kaytranada provides the heartbeat for the modern generation. Born Louis Kevin Celestin on August 25, 1992, in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and raised in Montreal, Kaytranada is the architect of a signature wobble that has redefined electronic, hip-hop, and R&B production. He rose to prominence through SoundCloud remixes that felt like a breath of fresh air, eventually releasing his debut album 99.9% in 2016. The album was a masterpiece of genre blending, winning the prestigious Polaris Music Prize and signaling the arrival of a new musical visionary. But just as his career was skyrocketing, Kaytranada faced a profound internal struggle. In a landmark 2016 interview with The Fader, he came out as gay, revealing that he had dealt with years of depression and a feeling of being suffocated by the pressure to fit into the hyper-masculine expectations of the DJ and hip-hop world. His decision to be open was a radical act in the electronic music scene, which, despite its queer roots, had become increasingly dominated by straight white narratives. Kaytranada's transparency didn't just liberate him personally, it gave his music a newfound sense of joy and clarity. The results of his authenticity are measurable in gold. His 2019 follow-up album, Bubba, was a triumph, winning 2 Grammy Awards in 2021, including Best Dance/Electronic Album, making him the first black artist to win in that category since its inception. He has collaborated with everyone from Pharrell Williams to Alicia Keys, amassing over 1 billion streams and becoming a staple on the global festival circuit. Kaytranada represents the quiet revolution, a man who doesn't need to shout to change the world. By simply being himself behind the decks, he has reclaimed the dance floor as a space for black queer excellence, proving that the best way to move the crowd is to move with your own truth. Victoria Monet. For years, Victoria Monet was the music industry's best-kept secret, a powerhouse songwriter crafting hits for superstars like Ariana Grande and Chloe and Halle. But the untold story of this Sacramento-born artist is her meteoric rise from the shadows of the writer's room to the center of the global stage. Born on May 1, 1989, Monet spent over a decade perfecting her craft, contributing to massive records like 7 Rings and Thank You Next, before deciding that her own story was too vital to remain unheard. In 2018, Monet stepped into her truth with a simple yet profound social media post, coming out as bisexual. She didn't treat her identity as a marketing gimmick. Instead, she wove it into the very fabric of her music. Her 2020 project, Jaguar, and her 2023 magnum opus, Jaguar 2, are masterclasses in silk-smooth R&B that celebrate desire without boundaries. The track Better Days and her viral hit On My Mama proved that she could blend vintage soul with a modern queer sensibility. Her impact peaked at the 2024 Grammy Awards, where she swept 3 wins, including the prestigious Best New Artist. By winning at age 34, she dismantled the industry's ageist narratives while standing tall as a Black queer mother. With over 1.5 billion streams and a reputation for unparalleled live performances that evoke the spirit of Janet Jackson, Victoria Monet is a beacon for artistic longevity. She represents a generation of Black women who refuse to choose between their career, their motherhood, and their queer identity. She isn't just making music, she is building a legacy where honesty is the currency and excellence is the standard. Monet has proven that when a Black woman finally claims her own light, she doesn't just shine. Frankie Knuckles. If the world has a place to dance away its sorrows, it owes that sanctuary to Frankie Knuckles. Born on January 18, 1955 in the Bronx, Knuckles didn't just play records, he birthed a movement. In the late 1970s, he moved to Chicago to become the resident DJ at a club called The Warehouse. It was here, in a space primarily frequented by Black and Latino gay men, that house music was born. Knuckles took the dying embers of disco and infused them with European electronic beats and soulful gospel vocals, creating a hypnotic, 4-on-the-floor rhythm that promised liberation. Frankie Knuckles was an openly gay man in an era when the world was often hostile to his existence. He understood that for the marginalized, the dance floor wasn't just about party-going, it was a church. His remixes, such as the hauntingly beautiful Your Love and the Whistle Song, became the blueprints for a multi-billion-dollar global industry. In 1997, his technical mastery was finally recognized when he won the first ever Grammy for Remixer of the Year, non-classical. He was a bridge builder, moving between the underground queer clubs of Chicago and the massive festivals of Europe, always carrying the soul of the Black queer community with him. Despite his immense fame, Knuckles remained the godfather to the end, a humble spiritual leader who saw music as a tool for social healing. When he passed away in 2014 at the age of 59 due to complications from diabetes, the world mourned a revolutionary. Former President Barack Obama even sent a letter of condolence to his family, recognizing his contribution to the cultural fabric of Chicago. Frankie Knuckles proves that the untold secrets of music are often found in the basements and warehouses where the marginalized go to feel free. He didn't just change the sound of the 20th century, he gave the LGBTQ+ community a beat to call home. Tevin Campbell. In the early 1990s, Tevin Campbell's voice was the gold standard of R&B. Born on October 11, 1976, in Waxahachie, Texas, he was a child prodigy discovered by jazz legend Benny Medina and mentored by the incomparable Quincy Jones. By the age of 15, he was already a multi-platinum artist, lending his flawless tenor to hits like Tell Me What You Want Me to Do and Can We Talk. His 1993 album, I'm Ready, was a cultural phenomenon, selling over 2 million copies and earning him multiple Grammy nominations. For a generation, Tevin was the face of youthful, romantic innocence. However, The weight of being a child star in a hyper-masculine industry meant that Tevin's untold truth remained hidden for decades. While rumors swirled for years, he lived in a world where a black R&B heartthrob was rarely allowed to be anything other than heterosexual. It wasn't until 2022, during an interview on the People Everyday podcast, that Tevin officially came out as a gay man. He spoke about his long journey towards self-actualization, describing himself as a former child star who happens to be gay. He didn't frame his story as a tragic secret, but as a peaceful, gradual embrace of his authentic self. Today, Tevin Campbell is celebrated not just for his 5 Grammy nominations or his legendary vocal runs, but for his courage in reclaiming his narrative. He has sold over 5 million albums worldwide and continues to perform for a loyal fan base that values his honesty as much as his high notes. His story is a powerful reminder that it is never too late to step into the light. Tevin isn't just an icon of the 90s, he is a beacon of hope for any artist who feels they must choose between their career and their identity. He proved that the heartthrob doesn't change, only our understanding of his beautiful, complex humanity. Michelle Ndegeocello. Michelle Ndegeocello is an artist who refuses to be tamed, labeled, or silenced. Born Michelle Lynn Johnson on August 29, 1968, she adopted the name Ndegeocello, which means free like a bird in Swahili, as a manifesto for her life and art. When she burst onto the scene in 1993 with Plantation Lullabies, she didn't just release an album, she launched a revolution. As an openly bisexual black woman with a shaved head and a bass guitar that growled with authority, she challenged every stereotype the music industry held about gender and race. Michelle's music is a visceral blend of funk, jazz, hip-hop, and rock, often tackling themes of political resistance and queer desire. Her 1996 masterpiece, Peace Beyond Passion, featured the track Leviticus, Faggot, a harrowing and brilliant critique of homophobia within the black community. At a time when such topics were strictly taboo, Michelle forced the industry to listen. She has amassed 11 Grammy nominations over her storied career, finally winning in 2024 for Best Jazz Alternative Album. Her commercial success, including the hit If That's Your Boyfriend, He Wasn't Last Night, never compromised her radical honesty. Beyond her solo work, Michelle is a musician's musician, collaborating with giants like Prince, Madonna, and Herbie Hancock. She is the architect of the neo-soul movement, yet she remains an outsider by choice, constantly reinventing her sound. Michelle Ndegeocello's untold secret isn't a secret at all. It is a lived truth that she has worn as armor for over 30 years. She represents the absolute pinnacle of artistic integrity, proving that a black queer woman can be the smartest, funkiest, and most fearless person in any room. She didn't just break the mold, she melted it down and forged something entirely new. Steve Lacy. Steve Lacy didn't need a massive studio to change the sound of modern music, he just needed his iPhone and a vision. Born Steve Thomas Lacy Moya on May 23, 1998, in Compton, California, he first gained fame as the teenage guitarist for the alternative R&B band The Internet. However, his untold story is one of a young man navigating fame while simultaneously exploring the fluid boundaries of his own identity. In 2017, during an unfiltered Q&A on Tumblr, Steve came out as bisexual, stating with his characteristic nonchalance that he was open to loving both men and women. His transparency was a breath of fresh air in a genre that often demands rigid labels. Steve's music, a hazy, lo-fi blend of funk, rock, and soul, became a playground for this exploration. His 2022 smash hit Bad Habit became a global phenomenon, spending 3 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and amassing over 1.5 billion streams. The song's universal theme of regret and desire resonated with millions. But for the LGBTQ+ community, it was a rare moment of seeing an openly bisexual black man dominate the pop charts on his own terms. With 2 Grammy nominations and a win for Best Progressive R&B Album for Gemini Rights, Steve has become a fashion icon and a symbol of Gen Z's refusal to be boxed in. He has collaborated with industry titans like Kendrick Lamar and Kanye West, yet he remains grounded in his DIY roots. Steve Lacy represents the new normal, an artist who is as comfortable in a skirt as he is in a suit, and as honest about his attractions as he is about his artistic process. He didn't just join the industry, he remodeled it to fit his own unique, colorful, and fluid reality. Sydney. In an industry built on loud egos and flashy theatrics, Syd, born Sydney Lauren Bennett, is a revolution of subtlety. Born on April 23, 1992 in Los Angeles, Syd grew up in a household where creativity was encouraged, eventually becoming the resident engineer and only female member of the controversial hip-hop collective Odd Future. While her peers were making headlines for their aggression, Syd was quietly building a legacy of queer representation. As an openly gay woman from the very start of her career, she faced the double challenge of being a woman in a male-dominated camp and a lesbian in a hyper-masculine genre. In 2011, she formed The Internet, a band that shifted the R&B landscape toward a more organic, soulful sound. On their Grammy-nominated album Ego Death, Syd's vocals, silky, understated, and cool, centered queer desire with a matter-of-factness that was groundbreaking. She doesn't sing about her sexuality as a struggle. She sings about it as a lived experience of love, heartbreak, and confidence. Her 2017 solo debut, Finn, further solidified her status as a tastemaker, blending trap influences with her signature smooth delivery. Beyond her music, Syd is a pioneer for Black queer women in production, a field where they are still vastly underrepresented. She has worked behind the boards for artists like Beyoncé and Kelly Rowland, proving that her technical ear is as sharp as her songwriting. Syd's untold truth is that she never felt the need to come out because she never hid. By simply existing as a calm, confident, and openly gay Black woman in R&B, she has provided a blueprint for authenticity. With millions of monthly listeners and a reputation for being one of the coolest artists in the game, Syd proves that sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that doesn't have to raise its volume to be felt. Brittany Howard. Brittany Howard is a force of nature that refuses to be contained by genre, gender, or expectation. Born on October 2, 1988 in Athens, Alabama, to a Black father and a white mother, Howard's early life was defined by the grit of the rural South and the tragedy of losing her sister to retinoblastoma. She channeled this raw emotion into the Alabama Shakes, a band that skyrocketed to global fame with the 2012 hit Hold On. As the frontwoman, Howard's voice, a volcanic mix of Otis Redding's soul and Janis Joplin's rock, earned the band 4 Grammy Awards and made her a household name. However, the untold story of Brittany Howard is her journey toward radical self-acceptance. In a world that often demands Black women be palatable, Howard has always been defiantly herself, a queer woman who embraces a masculine-leaning aesthetic and a genre-bending sound. In 2019, she stepped away from the safety of her band to release her solo debut, Jamie. Named after her late sister, the album was a public manifesto of her identity. Songs like Georgia explored the nuances of queer longing with a vulnerability rarely seen in mainstream rock. In a 2019 interview, she spoke openly about her marriage to her wife, Jessie LaFazer, cementing her status as a visible icon for Black queer women. With 16 Grammy nominations and multiple wins across different categories, Howard has proven that her niche story is actually universal. She has sold millions of records and headlined the world's biggest festivals, all while maintaining her integrity. Brittany Howard doesn't just sing, she testifies. She represents the untold truth that you don't have to fit the mold to lead the parade. Her presence in the industry is a reminder that a black queer woman from Alabama can become the most powerful voice in rock and roll simply by refusing to apologize for who she is. Billy Strayhorn. In the glittering history of American jazz, the name Duke Ellington is synonymous with royalty. But behind the throne was the untold secret of Billy Strayhorn, the man who composed many of the Ellington Orchestra's most enduring masterpieces. Born on November 29, 1915, in Dayton, Ohio, Strayhorn was a classically trained prodigy who joined Ellington's team at just 23 years old. He wrote Take the A Train, Lush Life, and Chelsea Bridge, contributing to a body of work that defined the sophisticated sound of the 20th century. What makes Strayhorn's story truly revolutionary is that he lived as an openly gay black man in the 1940s and 50s, an era when such a truth was not only taboo, but life-threatening. While Ellington functioned as his protector and public face, Strayhorn lived authentically among his inner circle, never hiding his long-term partner, Bill Grove. However, this authenticity came at a cost: professional invisibility. Because he lived outside the norm, the industry often sidelined him, crediting his work to Ellington or keeping him in the shadows during television appearances. Strayhorn didn't seek the spotlight, he sought the freedom to create, once famously stating his 4 freedoms: freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom from religion, and freedom from hate. Strayhorn's life was tragically cut short by esophageal cancer in 1967 at the age of 51. In his final days, he composed Blood Count, a hauntingly beautiful piece that captured his fading strength. It took decades for the world to fully credit him as a standalone genius. Today, Lush Life is regarded as one of the greatest compositions in the American songbook, and Strayhorn is celebrated as a pioneer who navigated a world of intense prejudice with unmatched elegance. He proved that even when the world tries to make you invisible, your music can become the very air the world breathes. Mickey Blanco. Mickey Blanco is not just an artist. They are a disruption of the status quo. Born Michael David Quattlebaum Jr. on April 2, 1986, in Orange County, California, Blanco first emerged as a poet and performance artist before storming the New York underground rap scene. Long before queer rap was a recognized subgenre, Mickey was blurring the lines of gender and genre, utilizing they/them and she/her pronouns, and appearing in high-fashion drag that challenged the hyper-masculine fortress of hip-hop. Their debut EP, Mickey, and mixtapes like Cosmic Angel delivered a chaotic, punk-infused energy that forced the industry to look at queerness through a lens of aggression and power rather than tragedy. However, the untold truth that defined Blanco's legacy came in 2015. In a move that was virtually unprecedented in the music industry, Mickey publicly revealed their HIV-positive status on Facebook. At a time when the stigma surrounding the virus remained a silent killer within the black community, Blanco's transparency was a radical act of courage. They didn't let the diagnosis end their career. They used it to deepen their purpose, becoming a global advocate for health equity and visibility. This honesty fueled their 2016 album, Mickey, featuring the hauntingly beautiful High School Never Ends, a track that explored the intersection of race, trauma, and longing. With over 100 million streams and collaborations with icons like Madonna and Kanye West, Mickey Blanco has proven that vulnerability is a superpower. They have toured the globe, from the most underground clubs to the most prestigious art biennials, always refusing to shrink for the comfort of others. Mickey represents the untold secret that staying alive and being loud is the ultimate form of protest. They didn't just break the rules of hip-hop, they burned the rule book and invited everyone to dance in the ashes. Kele Okereke. In the mid-2000s, the British indie rock scene was dominated by a very specific, heteronormative aesthetic. Then came Kele Okereke. Born Kelechukwu Okereke on October 13, 1981, in Liverpool to Nigerian parents, he became the lead singer and rhythm guitarist of Block Party. Their 2005 debut album, Silent Alarm, was a masterpiece of post-punk revival, selling over 1 million copies and being named NME's Album of the Year. Kele's frantic, soulful vocals and sharp, observational lyrics made him the face of a movement. Yet for years, he navigated a secret that the rock world wasn't quite ready to discuss. In 2010, Kele officially came out as gay in an interview with Butt magazine. This wasn't just a personal milestone, it was a cultural one. As a black man leading one of the world's biggest indie bands, Kele's presence challenged the white boys with guitars stereotype of rock music. He spoke candidly about his struggles with his parents' religious beliefs and the isolation of being the only one in the room. His 2010 solo debut, The Boxer, and his subsequent work with Block Party, such as the album Hymns, began to weave themes of queer desire and identity into the fabric of alternative rock. Today, Kele is a father and an established icon who has sold over 3 million albums worldwide. He has successfully bridged the gap between the guitar-heavy anthems of his youth and the electronic, dance-infused sounds of the queer club scene. Kele Okereke represents the untold truth that blackness and queerness have always been essential to the soul of rock, even when the industry tried to paint it white. He remains one of the most vital voices in British music, proving that you don't have to sacrifice your... Saucy Santana. Saucy Santana is the living embodiment of manifestation. Born Justin Harris on October 8, 1993 in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Santana's entry into the music industry was unconventional. He began as a makeup artist for the superstar duo City Girls. However, his infectious personality and razor-sharp wit couldn't be contained behind the scenes for long. In 2019, he released his debut single, Walk Like a Dog, a track that didn't just go viral on TikTok. It redefined the baddie aesthetic for a new generation. The untold story of Saucy Santana is his refusal to tone it down to fit the hyper-masculine mold of hip-hop. While previous generations of queer artists often felt pressured to be subtle, Santana arrived with full glam makeup, high-fashion furs, and lyrics that centered gay desire with the same bravado as any platinum rapper. His hits Material Girl and Walk have amassed over 500 million streams combined, proving that his audience isn't niche, it's global. In 2022, he signed a major label deal with RCA Records and collaborated with the legendary Madonna on Material Girl, a full-circle moment that solidified his status as a cultural titan. Beyond the charts, Santana is a pioneer of visibility. He has navigated intense online homophobia with a grace that empowers his millions of followers, particularly black queer youth who rarely see themselves represented as the main character. With a Grammy-nominated presence and a seat at the front row of every major fashion week, Saucy Santana represents the untold truth that femininity is a form of power. He isn't just a rapper. He is a revolution in a lace front wig, proving that the biggest flex in the world is being exactly who you are, out loud and in Technicolor. Big Freedia. Big Freedia didn't just popularize a genre, she brought an entire culture to the world's doorstep. Born Freddie Ross Jr. on January 28, 1978 in New Orleans, Freedia grew up in the church choir. but it was in the sweaty, high-octane clubs of the 15th Ward that she found her calling: bounce music. Bounce is a call-and-response style of hip-hop rooted in the black, queer, and sissy scenes of New Orleans, and Frida became its most powerful ambassador. With a voice that commands attention like a drill sergeant and a rhythm that forces the body to move, she turned local block parties into a global phenomenon. For years, Frida worked the underground circuits, but the untold secret of her success is how she permeated the highest levels of pop music. You've heard her voice even if you didn't know it. She provided the iconic "I came to slay, bitch" intro on Beyoncé's Formation, and collaborated again on the 2022 anthem Break My Soul. Her own reality series, Big Frida, Queen of Bounce, became the highest-rated original program on the Fuse network, running for 6 seasons and bringing the nuances of black queer life in the South to millions of living rooms. Despite facing systemic challenges, including a highly publicized legal battle regarding housing assistance that she used to advocate for better financial literacy, Frida has remained a pillar of her community. She has sold hundreds of thousands of records and headlined festivals from Coachella to Glastonbury. Big Frida represents the untold truth that the roots of modern dance music are black, queer, and Southern. She doesn't just bounce, she leads, reminding the world that joy is a radical act, and that New Orleans' greatest export is the freedom to be loud, proud, and completely unbossed. Johnny Mathis. In the history of American music, few voices have stayed as consistent, as velvety, and as universally beloved as that of Johnny Mathis. Born John Royce Mathis on September 30th, 1935 in Gilmer, Texas, and raised in the fog-drenched streets of San Francisco, he was a child prodigy whose father recognized his talent early, scraping together money for classical vocal lessons. By the late 1950s, while rock and roll was beginning to roar, Mathis provided a sophisticated alternative. His hits like Chances Are, Misty, and It's Not For Me to Say defined the romantic soundtrack of the mid-century, turning him into a superstar who transcended racial barriers during a deeply divided era. However, the untold truth of Johnny Mathis is a story of incredible longevity, maintained under the weight of a quiet, heavy secret. For the vast majority of his career, Mathis lived in a world where a black, romantic lead was expected to be a heterosexual fantasy for a predominantly female audience. In 1982, during an interview with Us magazine, he briefly acknowledged his homosexuality, stating it was a way of life he had grown accustomed to. The backlash from the industry and fans was so immediate and fierce that the statement was retracted, and Mathis retreated into a protective silence for decades. He once shared that coming out in the prime of his career would have been professional suicide. It wasn't until the 2000s that Mathis began to speak openly and without retraction about his identity as a gay man. Now 90 years old, his career statistics are staggering. He has sold over 360 million records worldwide, making him one of the top 3 best-selling artists of the 20th century. He holds the record for the most time spent on the Billboard 200 charts, with his greatest hits album remaining on the charts for an unbelievable 490 continuous weeks, nearly a decade. Johnny Mathis represents the ultimate triumph of the silent generation. He endured the stifling expectations of the 1950s and the racial tensions of the 60s, all while preserving a voice that sounds as clear today as it did 70 years ago. He was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame 3 times and received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2003. His legacy is a testament to the fact that while secrets can be a burden, a person's true essence, expressed through art, is immortal. Johnny Mathis didn't just sing love songs, he became the voice of love itself, proving that the heart knows no boundaries of race or orientation. 25 icons, 25 legacies of fire and silence. But here is the real question. Has the music industry truly evolved into a sanctuary of acceptance? Or are we still just celebrating the palatable versions of these artists? Some say the struggle made their music legendary, while others argue the industry owes them a debt that can never be repaid. What do you think? Is true freedom finally here, or is the closet still a survival tactic for Black stars today? Drop a 1 in the comments if you believe the industry has changed, or a 0 if you think there's a long way to go. Share your thoughts below, and stay tuned to Black Celebrity Secrets for more hidden histories. Your voice matters. Let's start the conversation.